Again, we should be, let me go a little bit bigger because I can't see that, and I know you can't. We're going to dive into it. And let me grab my notes, my handout. I have mine printed, but you guys will have it in front of you. And we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So for the first part, I'm going to read for the first two chunks of our passage. I'm going to read, and I'm going to give you my summaries, my gist and annotations. Okay? And then we'll translate into you doing it. All right? When I Was Puerto Rican by Esmeralda Santiago. While Francisco was still alive, we had moved to Hillary Street. That meant I had to change schools, so mommy walked me to PS 33, where I would attend ninth grade. The first week I was there, I was given a series of tests that showed that even though I couldn't speak English very well, I read and wrote it at the 10th grade level. So they put me in 9-3 with the smart kids. All right. So we know from the criteria for success that we need to annotate. We need to annotate this paragraph. We're going to underline names of people. Francisco is a person. So we're going to highlight it, and you go right here to the little U and underline. We're going to underline places. So Hillary Street is a place. We're going to underline it. That meant I had to change schools. So mommy, that's a person. We're going to underline it. PS 33, that is the school. That's a school in New York. They have a lot of letters and numbers for their schools. And then I'm going to also highlight this thing, ninth grade, which you guys are in now. Ninth grade. All right, so I underlined my names of people, my places and things that help me to build background knowledge. So I know that Esmeralda is in the ninth. She's getting ready to attend ninth grade. She moved to Hillary Street when somebody named Francisco is alive. So maybe they'll tell us more about Francisco. Maybe they won't, but we do know that it's a person who eventually died, but they was alive when she was telling this part of her story. We're going to highlight the things that, stand out to us and help make connections. She had to change schools. That jumps out at me. And the reason why that stuff jumps out at me is because we already read the background information about the school. So it makes sense. Okay, so is she get ready to go into this performing arts school? And that's a major thing. When you have to move and change schools, that is a major thing that happens to you in your life. It doesn't matter how many times you do it. It's always something major. And so for me, that jumps out to me, and it helps me to make a connection because now I know that Esmeralda is now she's getting ready to be a new kid in school. All right. What also stands out to me is that even though Esmeralda couldn't speak English very well, she read and wrote it on a 10th grade level. And that is very interesting to me because how can she not speak English very well, but can read it and write it so well that she's literally skipping a grade? That to me is amazing. So that stands out to me. So I'm going to highlight it. Okay, so I'm going to give a 10-word summary of what this little paragraph is about. So we're going to say Esmeralda moved to a new school and she doesn't speak English very well. And you guys can write this exact same thing on your notes. Okay. Now the guiding question, these are questions that are going to help us to completely understand or comprehend what we're reading. Okay. For this first paragraph, what did Esmeralda experience in this paragraph? Clearly, Esmeralda uh, started ninth grade at a new school. That's it. That is literally all we need to put, because that's basically what they're talking about. So we have our summary over here, and we have our guiding question, and we've answered our guiding question. Next. One morning, Mr. Barone, a guidance counselor, called me to his office. He was short with a big head and large hazel eyes under shapely eyebrows. His nose was long and round at the tip. He dressed in browns and yellows and often perched his tortoiseshell glasses over his forehead as if he had another set of eyes up there. So the first thing I want to do is highlight those nouns. That's those people, places, and things that builds background. Highlight it, underline. Mr. Barone, he is a guidance counselor. In fact, we're going to go ahead and underline all of it. Mr. Baron, a guidance counselor. He was short. He was okay. Now that's underline short with the big head and large hazel eyes and under shapely eyebrows. It's like, Mrs. Gordon, why would you underline that? Because this is describing what Mr. Barone looks like. And so when I'm imagining inside of my head, it's giving me a visual of what Mr. Barone could possibly look like. Okay. I also know that his nose was long and round at the tip, and he dressed in browns and yellows, and often perched his tortoiseshell glasses on his forehead as if he had another set of eyes up there. So we're going to go up to forehead, and I'm going to underline it because that gives me more insight onto what Mr. Barone looks like. Now I'm imagining a guy with a long nose, with a little bubby type tip at the nose. I'm seeing somebody with maybe some brown pants on with a yellow shirt, and then some tortoiseshell glasses on his face that are perched up on the top of his head. And actually, I'm imagining him with no hairline, and that's my own personal imagination running away with me. But this is what we need to do to make connections or build background knowledge. Okay. The next thing I want to do is let's read a little bit more. So he pushed his glasses up. What do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. He shuffled through some papers. Let's see here. You're 14. Is that right? Yes, sir. And you've never thought about what you want to be? And we're going to stop there. So when I think about highlighting, I think about, so he pushed up his eyeglasses, and what do you want to be when you grow up? So I highlight, for me, I'm thinking that seems to be very important. That's the overlooming question that a lot of us are already getting asked that. And so I think about when I was in ninth grade, and it stands out to me because that was a question that I was asked. What do I want to be when I grow up? And then I also highlight, I don't know, because I remember in ninth grade, kind of knowing, kind of not knowing what I wanted to be. And Esmeralda clearly states that she don't know what she wants to be when she grows up. Then As I move down a little bit, talks about Esmeralda is 14. So I'm going to highlight that you're 14 because it's important to note that, everybody's not in ninth grade that's 14 years old. We have 15-year-olds in also in the ninth grade. So that stands out to me. It's making a connection because I was 14 in ninth grade. And then the last thing I want to highlight as I'm reading is you never thought about what you want to be when you grow up. Because doesn't it sound like he's like really disappointed and you never thought about what you want to be? And so that sticks out to me as a reader. So the first thing we want to do is write our gist, the overall idea of these sentences, this little passage, this little chunk of the text. Overall, we see a lot of things going on here. We see how Mr. Barron looks. But the most important thing to me is Esmeralda doesn't know what she wants to be when she grows up. That's it. Those 2 to 7 sentences basically is saying that Esmeralda doesn't know what she wants to be when she grows up. And then we scroll down to the guiding question. Why do you think Mr. Barron asked Esmeralda what she wanted to be when she grew up? The answer is in the text. Mr. Barron is a guidance counselor. And I know from my own background knowledge that a guidance counselor is somebody I go to check my schedule. The guidance counselor is the person I can go to when I need somebody to talk. And the guidance counselor is a person that asks you these type of questions. They ask you what your life goals are so that they can guide you in the right direction. That is their job. That is what a guidance counselor does. This is what Mr. Barron does. He guides you to your life goal. So he wants to guide Esmeralda to her life goal. So the answer here I'm going to put is something simple. Mr. Barron is a guidance counselor. And he is trying to figure out what Esmeralda's life goal is, or her life goals are, so that he can guide her in the right direction. All right? It is as simple as that. Okay? Now, before we move forward to one more before I release you, let's talk about text to self connection. We haven't read any other stories yet. So we're not going to talk about text to text connections right this second. We're going to talk about text to self. And so when we look at the first chunk of the passage, I think about, and I'm going to put text to self. What is this relating to for myself? And I'm the teacher, so I'm not starting a new grade, but I am starting a new school just like you. And so I think about you guys as being my students, and you are starting a brand new school. Last year you were in middle school. This year you're in our ninth grade school. So just like Esmeralda, you are starting a new school. So for my text to self, I'll put my students are starting at a new school too. And so you will put, I'm starting a new school too, just like Esmeralda. And that is simply a text to self connection because it is how you connect with the text. So right now, Esmeralda is starting a new school. You're starting a new school. You're both in 9th grade. You literally connect with this text. At least that's the idea. You may say, no, this is not connecting with me, but literally you are connecting with the text. All right. So that's 2 to 7. How do we make a text to self connection? Okay. We talked about Mr. Barone. We talked about how he's a guidance counselor. We talked about what you want to be when you grow up and not knowing what you want to be when you grow. What is Esmeralda not knowing what she wants to be when she grow up. Now, for some of you, you may say, oh, that's true. And for me, I can only go for me because we're talking about Mrs. McCoy right now. And you can make the text to self connection personal to you. But for the most part, you can say something like, you can either say, I have been asked what, I'm going to make that lowercase because it seems like we're screaming at each other. I have been asked what I want to be when I grow up. Just like Esmeralda. Or we could say something like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up either. Okay? Those are some options there. And that's simply making our text to self connection. One more before I release you. This is very short. When I was very young, I wanted to be Yabera. And I think I pronounced that correctly. I'm going to make sure I pronounce Hivera. That's what it says. When I was very young, I wanted to be a Hivera. When I was older, I wanted to be a cartographer. Then a topographer. But since we've come to Brooklyn, I had not thought about the future much. Okay. The first thing we want to do is, again, underline the things that are nouns, person, place, things like that. A hivera is obviously a person, and according to the text, a hivera is a person who lives in Puerto Rico's countryside. So if you're Puerto Rican, you may understand exactly what that is, and or if you may have already just knew. But for me, I did not know what a hivera was until I read the story. But it's a person who lives in the Puerto Rican's countryside. And then another thing that we're going to underline is a cartographer. A cartographer is a person who makes maps. So those people who drew the map of the United States and label and all that, these are some things that our friend Esmeralda, our protagonist, you'll see that word, the person who's the main character in the story, was thinking about when she was young. She also thought about being a topographer. And a topographer is a person who makes maps that shows the height and shape of the land. So it's still on the same lines of making a map, but it's very specific to what type of maps you're making. And so it seems like Esmeralda really was into making maps when she was younger. And those are the things that we want to underline because they are nouns. They're people or type of jobs. Then we want to highlight Brooklyn because that's a place. So we know from the beginning of the story that Esmeralda is from Puerto Rico and that she moved to Ilry Street. Now we know that Ilry Street is in Brooklyn, which is in New York City. Okay. And we know that she has not thought about the future much. All right. So what else do we want to underline? That is all we want to underline now That's what I would want to underline. Now I just want to think about, what do I want to highlight? What are some details that stand out to help me to make a connection? I not thought about the future much. That's helping me to make a connection with the text. So I'm going to highlight that because I've been in situations where I have not thought about the future very much. Okay? All right. And then another thing I also want to highlight is when I was very young, I wanted to be. And the reason why I'm not going to highlight the other things is because I never wanted to be a Havera or a photographer or a topographer. But when I was very young, I did have ideas in my head of who and what I wanted to be. So that's helping me to make a connection, because just like Esmeralda, when she was smaller before 14, she had an idea of who she wanted to be. I have also had that type of idea when I was very young, before I was 14 years old. I wanted to be I wanted to be a teacher. I also wanted to be a writer, a journalist. Those are some of the things that I wanted to be when I was very young. I also wanted to be a newscaster, believe it or not. And so I can connect with the idea of having some type of idea of what I wanted to be when I was younger before I turned into a teenager. All right. So the next thing we want to do is write our gist. The summary, even though this is a very short part of the text, we still want to summarize it. Again, just like I said before, we know she moved to Brooklyn. Esmeralda moved to Brooklyn. Let's capitalize that. Moved to Brooklyn, and she doesn't know what she wants to be. Or how about she doesn't know her future goals. She talks about that. She says how she hasn't thought about the future very much. Let's get a period on that. Okay. So our guiding question says, why hasn't the protagonist thought about their future goals? Because she just moved. That's literally what it says. It says that she has just moved. Okay. All we have to put is she just moved to Brooklyn and hadn't thought about it. Again. So let's think about a text to self connection. Text to self connection. When I think about this, like I mentioned to you guys before, I have been in a situation, my highlighted areas is my text to self connections. When I was very young, I wanted to be something. And then when I got to 14, I had not thought about what my future goals might have been. So you can say, I'm going to say, when I was 14, I did not think about my future very much because I wanted to have fun. But eventually, before the end of my ninth grade year, I had started really seriously thinking about what I wanted to be, because you get ready to go into 10th grade and you have to know what you want to be. So till you can know whether or not you want to go to college, or you want to go this. It's a very serious year, really, even though it doesn't sound like it is. And yours might look something like, I have not thought about my future very much. Now, if you're one that has been thinking about your future, You can say, when I was very young, I wanted to be a firefighter or what have you. Whatever is true for you, that's what you're going to put in the text to self when it relates to this. Think about it hard, but not too long. Okay? All right. So from 9 until 25, you're going to go to you should already be in your handout. You're going to continue with the lesson. Continue with the lesson. And you're going to read, you're going to underline, you're going to highlight. You're going to make sure that you do your summary, which does not have to be any more than 10 words. You're going to make a text to self connection. Now, if there are some areas that you don't have a text to self, you won't necessarily be dinged for that. It won't be a problem. But the goal is to try to find some type of connection with the text for each chunk of the text. But don't force it too much that you end up not being true to yourself. Okay? You're going to answer the guiding questions and you're going to make the connections. Write your gist, answer the guiding questions, and make your text to self connections. All right? Now, what are your next steps? Read the rest of the day's selection and complete the rest of the annotations, the gist, and the essential questions. Then you're going to do your exit ticket. You're going to go to week 1, day 3, and down to the very bottom is your exit ticket. You're going to click on it, and it's there, I promise. The site may be, there it is, see? It is 4 questions. 4 questions. Only 4. So that is it for today, guys. You are ready to go be great. See you again tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye.